Hello everyone, I'm Harsha from DEVSTRONS. If you don't know about me, I am even an organizer just like everyone else. So I welcome you all to BUGTRONS Con series powered by Prep Insta and streaming partner StreamYard, brought to you by DEVSTRONS and Learn With community. So, Bucktrons is an initiative by DevStrons. It began with the mindset of encouraging community folks and making them aware of the edtech industry by putting emphasis on problem solving, code efficiency, code optimization, and enhancing skills. We empower coders to get influenced by developing software, solving bugs, and producing numerous opportunities via tech. If you haven't registered yet for the contest, the links are in the description. So we are back with yet another session of Bucktrons Con series with the same energy but definitely a different topic. So today's topic revolves around entrepreneurship and product building. Talking about today's guest, so he's none other than Mr. Kaushik Roy. So Mr. Kaushik Roy is sorry. So Mr. Kaushik Roy is a lead engineering and product team at Hack2Skill. He is also a product developer and software architect at Hack2Skill. Welcome, Mr. Kaushik. I hope you're
Hello,
doing well.
hi, Harshda.
Hi,
Yeah,
hello.
perfectly fine.
Thank you so much, and I'll go backstage and you continue with your session.
Yes, yeah. I'd just like to take everyone. So basically, when I say that what is entrepreneurship, what is I'd say product building, and how this journey starts for developing or young birds who are trying to understand how the ecosystem works, how actually you can be a part of a product development life cycle. So I'd say that it does not begin at the day one. It begins step by step. It takes you through a long journey, how you understand the things, how you are taking the flow, how you are doing different stages at different levels of your college. If you are like a college enthusiast, if you are going through your colleges, if you are attending college, or if you are understanding, you juggling between whether you want to attend a exam or you want to continue with your startup or your idea. So what should you figure out, and what should be the best balance out there? These are the major questions that me as a developer, I'd say, me as a college student, me as a person who has certain ideas used to face. And at the same time, I do have seen lot many others people have also faced the same challenge. So how do you do this? How do you maintain that balance? How do you come up with ideas? So not only there's entrepreneurship at one end, that how do you fund your idea? How do you get money to get team members to work for? Because that's most important thing. And even before that, how do you find your co-founder? How do you work with the people who you want to work with? How do you find the best potential? Because we have seen lot many friends not being that capable or not being good enough to work with you as a team member. So what is that balance out there? You need to understand that. So for that, that's a long journey, I'd say, and understanding how eventually you would turn out to be a developer, how eventually you turn out to be a entrepreneur, or how eventually you see that your product is good enough. Because these two are totally different game. You might have a very good product, but you are not able to market it to the audience, or you might not have that better product, but you are pretty well at marketing and it reaches to the audience. So how do you achieve that? How do you maintain the perfect balance? That's what you need to achieve in it. So I'd be going through each and everything, but before that, I'd like to quickly introduce myself. That is how I've been going through different stages, how I took different leaps, what I have been doing for the past 2 or 3 odd years, or even the next past 5 years, what I've been doing. So I belong from a third tier college, I'd say, and there is no shame or shy in saying that. Definitely, there are certain restrictions that you're not able to achieve. Let's say, for instance, you do not get that much of an exposure, you do not get how to move ahead, you do not know what you should do, because people around you definitely are not, the hustle is not there if you are not looking for what to how to achieve. So for that, first of all, definitely there's a learning curve to it as well. So I've been a part of a third year college, looking forward to how to understand. One thing that I came to know is that rather than hustling through the internships or going through different internships, though it is also pretty important, or creating your projects of your own, the best part, the best, I'd say, jump you should take, the leap you should take is participate in hackathons as much as possible. Understand how hackathons work around. Not only hackathons, be a part of communities, because communities help a lot. They bring people together from different colleges. So you might be from a college which has a totally different environment, and people in different colleges might be learning different other stuff, which is like understanding or going with the flow of the industry. So how do you achieve these? How do you attain these? That's most important. And how do you maintain that balance of actually how we would be performing at different stages? Shall we focus more on the communities part? Shall we look into the community development part? Shall I start preparing for hackathons? Should I participate in it, or should I organize the hackathon? There are a lot of questions that pop up into people's minds. So that's pretty important for everyone to understand. And in that aspect, how do you achieve certain heights in total? So for the same, what I have been doing is that I used to work in a lot of internships. I had started early in my second year itself, wherein I had done internship in HCL. Then I did an internship in NLD. And to be honest, for the first internship, it was completely unpaid. And it was just to get to know how corporate works, what are the nitty-gritties, or what are the behavioral functions that come up. And then definitely I started participating in hackathons. There were multiple hackathons that I've won in the course, naming a few from Smart India Hackathon to the NASA Hackathon. I have won them, as well as I was also participating in multiple other hackathons from which I got to the idea of the current product that I am building, which is a hackathon platform, which actually works in organizing smooth hackathons for communities, basically building the bridge. Because after understanding the entire process and part, I do came to know that okay, there's a gap, there's a bridge in between this organizers, there's a bridge between how the students understands how they work along at different stages. So that needs to be understood. So for that, what you need to do is that as a student, you need to have perfect set of mentors. There's a lot of culmination that needs to come up when you're thinking about entrepreneurship, when you are thinking about, let's say, the product. You have got a beautiful idea, what should you do then? Is it the right time to initiate it? Do you have the resources that you'd be required? Because creating a prototype is no bigger thing. A person can single-handedly create a prototype, but converting it into the product, the moment 1,000 people come up to your product and have a look at it, they taste it, they will like blast it out of the floor. You will receive feedbacks like, hey, what bullshit is this? It is not working at all. So how do you react to those? How do you understand those? So what you need to do is that basically go with the flow, understand how the balance should be. Um, Going by my experience that I have had, though it's pretty less compared to the industry moguls, I'd say. I've just been into the industry for past 2 years, but understanding it is pretty difficult in a way. Something might work for you, something might not work for you. The same thing that you have been practicing for past 6 months has worked wonders at one stage, but the next 6 months it stops giving you the return. So how do you do that? And what is the balance over there? That needs to be understood. And once we talk about the product, definitely each product has a different life cycle. Now everyone goes through the SDLC, which is part of the course in a computer science, but no one understands actually the importance of SDLC when you are going through it. If you are a product guy, then the first subject that you should pay the most attention to, if you are a computer science grad, is you must pay your entire attention to an SDLC subject, because it explains to you how the ecosystem would work throughout in the future. It explains to you how you would understand how your product would grow up, Because while creating prototypes, all what you do is that simply code the stuff as per your understanding, put it live, ask few people to test it. If there's a bugs, you just rectify them on the flow. But that does not happen when you are developing a, let's say, a live project or a full scale project. How do you do that? So these are the few nooks and corners that you do not get to understand while in your student journey. So what I'll do is that I'll quickly just try to take you through all of this stuff. It would be more or less higher on the side of like understanding rather than presenting a PPT, because that would not inculcate what I'm trying to speak, because it's the experience. As it is said that when you are going through a biography, it's best read on a book rather than watching a movie for it, because book covers it all and a person explaining does the job. So just give me a moment. Yeah. Okay. So what is the journey over here? Taking a few instances, first of all, you need to have an idea. You need to have the courage that you would be following it, the idea that you have got. The second thing is, how do you work around with it? Let's say I'm doing certain things. So is it even feasible? Having to know that, okay, what is the feedback on it? Getting feedback from the participants, getting feedback from the people, getting feedback from the mentor, that will it work or not? Because some would say that it works perfectly, but it might be the case that, okay, they are saying you just because they are your well wishers. So you need to get brutal feedback from people. That should be critical for you. You might feel low at that moment, but that would work for you, how you are working around and understanding the flow. So that is an entire journey that you're talking about when you are going through an entrepreneurship cycle. Now, in terms of entrepreneurship, what is it? How does it work around for you? So that needs to be understood as well, and as well as what the flow is. So let's say you are working in a different zone. You need to first figure out, if it's a tech product, you need to have a developer along with you. It might be a front end, it might be a back end. How do you understand the flow of it? Then let's say if you are working, even though if it is a tech product, you would require someone who would take care of the operations, because definitely there would be some kind of operations involved. There would be some kind of marketing involved. As a computer science grad, as an electronics grad, you might pay attention to all of the tech, but you might not understand that, okay, these are also essential parts. You might overlook them, because at the end it is all about the user experience that goes to the user's end. You need to understand that how the user would feel the product. Because just an example out there, Apple, though it's being rated pretty high, why is it that people stand in queues just to get the first look of the mobile phone that it launches? And at the same time, Android is like, everyone is like, okay, let's have a mobile. Why is it? It is all about the user experience that they have created, the smoothness that which you are using. There are many different examples. There's a popular case study of why Flipkart is doing well in India compared to why Amazon is not doing great. There have been market share revolutions, like which shows that Flipkart has got a much higher market share compared to what Amazon does. And obviously Flipkart is doing way better in second tier and third tier cities. So what is going behind all those? What are the different scopes that are being worked upon? Those need to be understood. Now that's one part of the story. When I'm talking about the other part, that is your internal infrastructure. And internal infrastructure could consist of anything, whether let's say your team members, your bonding, your understanding, how well you are prepping up for the eventualities. Because recently there was a news wherein Coinbase tried to pull up I'd say a hysteria, wherein they had this ad run for millions of dollars, but they did not prepare their tech part. So now the flow of user which had come to their website, that was completely lost. So you need to understand, like let's say right now you are having 100 daily active users. Now in next 10 days you need to achieve 1000 daily active users. So how will your tech behave? Are you capable enough, that is your product will handle that amount of traffic? Because it might seem that okay, it's pretty small. One MB file that you feel right now is being rendered on the website by 10 users could cost you thousands of dollars when 10,000 users are coming onto your platform. Just viewing, they might not even go and add it to a cart. If it's an e-commerce, they might not even get the course that you are sending. So how does those things work? These are little intricacies which create the difference between a startup or a business, because a startup always tries to evolve itself, whereas a business tries to remain stagnant. They do not make any revenue growths, they do not make any profit breakthroughs, but yeah, they are doing the business. So that is one thing that we need to understand.
Well, thank you, Kaushik, for all those insights. It was really great hearing you. Well, there's a question. So, how
That's
would you define entrepreneurship in your terms?
For me, if you are to ask me, because entrepreneurship is a totally debatable question for every other person. Some might say that okay, it's pretty sorted. You have got everything in track. You have got the team, and you have that hustle of creating a product. But if you ask a person like me, I'd say that entrepreneurship is like every day you get to learn something new, and it's about how you take on those challenges. It's like the never say no attitude that you need to have. Whether say for instance there's a client that you are having and he says that okay, that's what is the requirement. You have an SOW or the scope of work for a project, and you complete that SOW, everything is fulfilled, and then suddenly he says that I want, hey Kaushik, there's a request that if you could do this out of courtesy, out of favor. Now, that might be the game changer because you need to retain that client for the next deal. But are you willing to take that loss, the cut in the profit that would come when you are coming up or helping out that client with certain favor that he's asking for? So that's the call. That's the difference that creates. And that's the hustle. So for me, if you want to describe entrepreneurship in a line, I'd say it's like the hustle and how you overcome, what decision you take for it. That is what entrepreneurship is.
Even trust is a most valuable thing that you see in entrepreneurship, right?
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
my next
definitely.
question is somewhat based on that as well. So, entrepreneurship brings up a lot of perks for you as well as it brings up a lot of challenges. So, you being a part of a startup, so what challenges have you faced seeing a growing startup in its phase or journey?
Yeah. So when you are in college days, it's pretty easy because you do not need money to upkeep, or let's say have your own expenses covered up. So at that time it's pretty easy if you're starting to work on an idea, because you do not need to cover up the expenses. Even the teammates or your co-founding team or the employees or the interns, whatever you call, if they are from the college, you do not have to compulsorily compensate them in form of monetary basis. So that is ease. But when you're starting as a college pass out, or let's say if you are starting even in college, once you are out of the college, you have started the business, you have started the startup, then suddenly there's a cliff, I'd say, in which you have to take the leap, wherein you have to figure out how you will make the compensations, how you will pay the interns, how you will pay your team members, how you will pay your co-founding team, what would be your ratio. There's a lot of stake, and this is only about the struggle in terms of monetary basis. Now, coming to the next part, that is how do you figure out that your work would be appreciated. So let's say you have dedicated last 3 months, last 6 months developing the product without doing much of feedback or without doing much of scalability testing, and then suddenly you go to the market and the market does not need your product. So what do you do then? You have invested your last 6 months, and those 6 months not only took your time from you but also drained you out of your pocket. So that is one struggle that usually most of the startups face, and you need to have that courage, like okay, shall I continue ahead with this, shall I bring in new features to it? And that's a pretty judgmental nightmare, that if you decide to go ahead with the project, even then it might not yield returns, and then you end up being like out of money. Or The case might be that after 6 months and investing another 3 months, your project does the wonders. So what do you do then? So there are a lot of, I'd say, lot many struggle that you will face through your journey of entrepreneurship, whether it is like sourcing funds for your startup, or let's say you have to generate revenue, or you need to sell your product, you need to get the clients to be, you need to service the clients. So there are n number of struggle that you will face, and then definitely there's an internal commitment issue, there's internal bonding about the team members. So the hustle goes on and on every day. Hello, am I audible? Okay.
Yep, you're perfectly audible. I think we
Okay.
just lost Harsha right now. Thanks. You
Okay.
can continue.
Okay. So when I'm saying about, let's say, the product side, so there's been a lot of talk about entrepreneurship. I say let's move on to the product side. How does product work? How do you define what would be the minimal viable product that you should pitch to an investor? How do you find an investor? Those are the journeys that you need to cover up, because if you are a sales driven organization, or let's say you are a servicing organization, you might not have that need for generation of revenue, you might not have that need for funding. But when you are moving ahead, let's say you are curating certain ideas and you're working trying to work on certain research based products, you would require certain amount of funding for it. So how do you do that? How do you achieve those targets? So for me, in that case, I'd say first of all, we need to get the idea jotted down onto a pen and paper. That is where most of the idea products come out from, whether it's on the whiteboard or it is on the pen and paper form. You create wireframes, you create hand drawn sketches of what your product would look like, whether if it is a software, if it's a hardware, it's the same goes for everyone. Now you gather team members who might be excited in your idea, so you discuss it with your friends. Mostly it is the friends who come along with you or tag along with you in your idea or in your hustle. You get those team members, you look for people who you'd require for creating a prototype. So now there comes a journey wherein you decide, like, okay, shall I go for funding right now, or shall I create an MVP or a minimum viable product right now? So usually people do go with the trend of having an MVP before going for the grants. And in case of MVP, you have to flush in certain amount of your own pocket. So that needs to be done, because you will have to have a designer who will create prototypes or design of the prototype that needs to be curated. And then definitely moving ahead after that, you will have to create certain other stuff. Let's say you are creating a software product which caters to the app, or let's say mobile phone users, or you are curating a website, a portal that would handle certain specific tasks. So what you will do, you will have to have an MVP, and there the wireframe would not do the work for you, because you will have to have a working model that helps you understand what the user flow would be. So in that case, what do you do over there? So most of the people, what they do is that they create an MVP. So for that, if you are having a team member who is pretty proficient technically, you will move ahead with it. You will create the wireframe. Once the wireframe is done, you just hustle up your days, your nights, and then create the prototype. And then is the journey wherein you decide, like, let's say, shall I go to the investors? But what most of the startups do fail over here is that they do not get the feedback, they do not get to know what the people would see in their product. Will they, is there definitely a need for it at all or not, or do you want it to be utilized or not? Will people have that acceptance? Because definitely there's a challenge of acceptance. If you are accustomed to WhatsApp, then shifting to any other messaging service is pretty difficult. So you need to find that perfect sweet spot in, like, okay, will that be used or not? Will I utilize, will my product stand out and solve the problem that people are facing? So let's say if you are utilizing in a way WhatsApp, there might be certain features that you want, and certain other platform has got those features. So then you are definitely willing to shift to. But that is only for those people, I'd say, who are like desperate to get those features, who are missing out or who are losing their time on WhatsApp. So you need to get those feedback. You need to know what your target audience is. Then comes the stage usually wherein you hustle for, and I'd say investors, while you try to gather the funds. And how do you gather those funds? That is also another big question that you need to achieve. So gathering funds is a totally different game. You need to first find the investors which are interested in your domain. So it might be that the investor that you're looking forward to is not interested at all, or is not of your domain. So how do you do that? And how do you work around with it? So that needs to be understood. What is the sweet spot which investor you should chase, getting appointments, and then definitely there's only 2 minutes or 3 minutes of time that you've got to pitch your product. So there comes another part that you need to have perfectly fluently gone through. That is your pitch. The pitch should be ready. So let's say I'm to pitch a product. I'll have to pitch it within less than 2 minutes, and within the first 30 seconds itself, the person who is listening to your pitch should be able to know what your product is. And in the next 30 seconds, there comes the part wherein you have to explain to your investor or the audience that what is the difference that you'll be creating with the project. So first of all, why is there a need for the product that you're having? How will it solve the problem? Are there any market competitors out there? And if they are not, why has there been no one who has come up with that solution? That also need to be answered, because people will question you that, okay, जब आपको idea ही नहीं था, if you do not have any competitors, how do you feel that people even want this? So that needs to be there. And if there are competitors, you need to come up with the answer that, hey, okay, this is what I do perfectly. Okay, so these are the few things that needs to be understood in terms of a picture, I'd say, how you pitch your product. The next game that comes up to is after this stage is that, let's say you have got the funds, you have got a pretty good fund, but every other day we get to hear startups being set up, startups being shut down. Recently, we had heard one of the startups in EdTech, that is Lido, by the name of Lido, got shut down with circumstances or terms of closure undisclosed, and it was a pretty big startup. If you look into the startup ecosystem, Lido was doing pretty good. So why did it fall? Even though it had certain funding. So there comes the next stage, that is how do you organize your organization or a private limited firm? How do you organize it? You need to have clear specific goals. You need to have a common vision of the co-founding team. You need to have what are the things that you need to understand and how you need to grow up with time. So that is the another stage that people do face problem with. Like, okay, this is fine, I need to work along with it, I want to understand these lines. And then if you have got everything in place, then comes the typical part of building the product, because until then it was all about the prototype, it was all about gathering up the team, it was all about sourcing the resources or the monetary funds for your product. Now here comes the actual product building team. So what is a perfect mixture for a product? That is a very big question which people do struggle to answer, because definitely I have also not cracked it yet. uh, People in Amazon, Microsoft, Google, they haven't also still cracked it. Because if someone is able to crack the perfect product, definitely it would be occupying 100% marketplace. But no such organization is out there which can proudly say that, okay, I captured 100% of this marketplace, whether it is cell phones, whether it is, let's say, computers, desktops, any sort of product. You will see there are a lot of competitors. So this is what this needs to be done. Now, to the next part, if let's say if there are any more questions from the audience, I'd like to answer them. Otherwise, in terms of product journey, I'd get into more technical part. Let's say how to understand the techniques, what are the best, if you are talking a software project, what are the best tech stacks that you should follow, the design principles. So that needs to be pretty clear. Let me just have a look what I should cover up next. Yeah, hello, Harsh. You're not audible actually if you're speaking. No, still not audible to me.
Just send me a listening to you. So
Yeah,
I
it's
have
audible.
one more question. Acha, okay, so there are no questions so far. Am I not audible?
Yeah, you are audible now.
Hey, just a second. Just push me down.
Yep, I think there's no question from the chat anymore. Meanwhile, when we connect with the Harsha, we could have much more things from her. You can continue right now, and I'll be there.
Okay, so let's say you're talking about a tech-based project, I would say, wherein you need to cover certain aspects. Let's say you want to create a prototype, you want to work on a software project. So how do you select the tech stack that would work best for you? How do you figure out which team members you should come up with? And what should be the journey of the product? So simply in college days, I'd say it's pretty simple. You get certain stuff, you work along with it. So in terms of how do you work along with a project, that comes to questions, because during the early days, all you need to do is that write in some lines of code, have a backend language, have a front end language, have a database connected, and there you go. Voila, you have the project ready. But when you're talking about products which would be going live for the audience out there, so how do you cater to it? How do you work along with it? And how do you build that up? Now, the biggest problem that you will face as a developer, as a product designer, is that you need to have a lot of integrations, which you do not think while you are building up a project at a college level. First of all, what are the compliances that you need to do? Because there will be a lot of privacy concerns raised by different authorities out there. What would be your scalability issue? So by scalability, I do mean is that certain cloud services have different charges. Now, during while building projects, you can select any of it because it falls completely in the free tier. But while you're going for a life scale project, you have to have a good service that is 24/7 up and running, and add to it which service you should select. What would be the pricing? There comes the question. Apart from it, how do you understand like what should be the tech stack? Let's say your project is working completely fine. Just say, for example, there's a web page that you're rendering, and it takes like 1 MB of space to render. Now there's an outflow of 1 MB of data from your server. Definitely your cloud service provider would be charging you for that. Now for 1 MB or up till let's say 1 GB, that might be free. But the moment you cross that limit, they'll charge you for every KB that there's a transaction of. So assume that you are having 100 daily active users onto your platform, then definitely it is falling free. You are enjoying your time, you are having fun. Okay, my product is doing pretty well. I'm not getting billed for anything. I'm having 30 active users daily, out of which 20 are interacting with the product. I'm doing great. I'll go for the next rounds. I'll scale this up. I'll achieve 10,000 daily active users. But the moment the ticker counts and the threshold for the product is achieved, then what do you do at that stage? Because you have crossed the free tier limit, and now there's a big question that how are you going to pay? Because remember that 1 MB file that you were rendering onto your web page, now that would cost you like thousands of dollars, because 1,000 people, 10,000 people are coming, and they all of them are rendering that 1 MB file. It goes into tens of GBs, and then the moment you go to tens of GBs, there's a cost incurred with it. So that is one of the big problems that you will face while you are doing a live project. Is that how you will cater to the scalability, how to respond to the scalability? Because the moment you are ready for a scalable solution, there's a peak, there's a drop, there's a crest, there's a drop. So these are the terms that you will face. Now, what's the drop? It could be the low point, or in a day wherein you, let's say there are only 10 users on your website during the night time, and there are 10,000 users at the same time during the peak hours, let's say 6 p.m. in the evening. So how do you handle that? Because the server would be running for you day in and day out. Now, logically speaking, your cost should be less during the night time when you are having few users, and during the daytime when there are thousands of users on your platform, the server should be running at its full potential so that it caters to it. So how do you maintain that balance? There comes a load balancer, but to perfectly curate it, how to save amount. This is one problem, that is load balancing and scalability. The other problem that you as a product developer or designer would face is that there are a lot of third party integrations that you would require. These days, none of the platforms tend to go the, I'd say, logical way of sign up, wherein you fill the form and then sign up to a platform. Rather, what you will do is that you will look for that Google sign in button, which is present onto the website, as quickly, and then just sign up. So that is one problem that you need to understand. Because if you are organizing an event, you are having a product based platform, and there's a sign up process. So you need to send a notification to the email of the user that, hey, XYZ, you have been registered to the platform. That needs to be done, because only then the user will know, only then the user will engage with your platform. Otherwise, it would be a one time visit. You need to have your user engaged with you. So for that, you will have to integrate certain third party services. You will have to have a emailing services. The email service does not come free of cost. You need to figure out which service to we use out there. There are a lot many services. There's SES from Amazon, there's MailChimp, there are XYZ services out there. So which one to choose? Which would be the best perfect fit for your product? Because for some products, MailChimp would be a better fit. For some, SES might be a better fit. For some, due to monetary commitments or monetary constraints, SES should be the best fit because that's the cheapest out there. So this is the judgment that you need to do, and these judgments make a huge lot of difference. Now, just considering the example, let's say an email service which costs 10 paise, and there's an email service which costs 20 paise. So as a developer, you might feel okay, ये तो 10 पैसे का ही difference है, क्या फर्क पड़ जाता है? But the moment there are 1 lakh users on your platform that day, and they sign up, and all of them receive a mail, so what does that have? How will you cater to it? Are you ready for it? Have you paid that much amount of credit to your email service provider that it sends the OTP, that it sends the registration mail? Let's say you have a mobile verification system into your platform, and you need to send the OTP. The user does not get the OTP in time just because you do not have a credit in your messaging service. So what do you do then? You have lost one user because a bad experience to a user. Let's say you come across, you want to sign up on one of the platforms, and you do not receive, after trying for, let's say, 4 to 5 times, you do not receive the OTP for next 10 minutes. You as a user, are you ever going to get back to the platform? There's a huge chance that you'll never look to that platform. Along with that, you'd also negatively market that product that, hey, उस पे तो कभी मत जाना, that's completely wayward, it's completely useless platform. So how do you cater to it? क्या आप ready है? Are you ready for that marketing storm that will bring a lot of users? Will you be able to cater to that audience? Are your services running up front? Is your code completely perfect? Have you tested it properly? Have you gone through each of the test cases that your code might fail for? Because there might be cases for the accounts that you haven't accounted, or the things that you haven't even thought of might come up, and how do you tackle that? Because each product has some bug at its end, but the perfect definition of a product is one which is bug free. Not bug free, I'd say, but is reliable at one, that you can rely on it. You can justify, okay, मैंने register करा, my details should not be compromised. My private details that I'm entering into the registration form, the profile that I've created is safe with the developer, is safe with the organization which is hosting. Now, that's there's a lot of layers of abstractions, I'd say. And talking about abstraction, it is all about how you work along with it.
Yeah, exactly what you discussed regarding the email feature, regarding the servers, that how should we have to handle the registration is actually important part of the product designing. So I have a question regarding that, and meanwhile you're just discussing that as well. That what do you think? What are the major aspects of developing a successful product?
So,
Are there any
yeah.
Are there any key terms related to that? We should very well focused on it.
Okay. So when I speak about what are the key terms or like a successful product, I'd say. So, first thing first, you need to create empathize with the audience that you're having. So, how do you empathize? You have to go into the audience. You have to behave as a user. You need to go through that entire journey. That what is the problem that the user is facing out there? Your potential user, because right now you do not have a product. You will be building that product. So you have to empathize with them. You have to understand. Okay, what's the need? Is there actually a need for a project that I'm thinking? Okay, if there's a need, how it should solve the problem? Because there have been a lot of products which have come and gone. The reason being they were solving the problem, but the flow in which they were doing, the user experience that they had was not up to the standard. People thought that okay, इससे बढ़िया मैं खुद manually कर दूंगा rather than having utilizing this project. So first key important of a successful product, key point I'd say, is empathizing with the audience that you're targeting to.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's the perfect one that we should know how what's the importance of the product in the world. So yeah, meanwhile we have one question from the pile. I would like to tell you that. So what are the skills required to be the software architect?
Okay, becoming a software architect is a long process, I'd say, and you won't be able to become a software architect until and unless you are a good developer. So you need to be a good developer, irrespective of the language that you are using, irrespective of the logics that you are using. First of all, the very first step to becoming a software architect, in my opinion, is that your logical analysis should be pretty good. You should be able to grasp or understand what are the use cases that may arise. You have to like understand, okay, if the user selects this, what should happen? What should be the response from the project that you have built? Let's say if a user applies to a certain use case, there's a conditional statement and the user selects some other thing, he's not interested to even select. So how do you convey it to him? So a software architecture's job not only builds up from the ground zero, wherein he has to understand and how the product will work. The very next step that comes up in a architect's journey is that drawing the blueprint for the project. So what would be the use case? What would be the user flow diagram? What would be the algorithm that you'd be using? Because definitely, as I said, the moment the algos scale up, right now you might be having a complexity of n, but it won't take a time it reaches to n log n. That might be the case according to certain layer of abstraction that you'll be adding onto the code. Let's say right now it is pretty easy. You are having a single if else statement, but you don't know how your product will scale in future, and you are adding step by step condition after condition which are needs to be checked. There are the multiple loops that are running behind the server. So these all are increasing your complexity, and the moment you increase the complexity, you might get accustomed to pages like 500 bad requests. You might get accustomed to pages like server timeout. So these are the things that you need to understand. You empathize that okay, this is how the user journey would be. And then once you have created the blueprint, you are ready with everything. The next job that a software architect has to understand or go through is the perfect mixture of the programming language. For some instances, NoSQL might work perfect as a database, but for some, SQL might be the one. So how do you differentiate that? Okay, shall I use a SQL database? Shall I use NoSQL database? What would be the relation between the two databases that might be interacting? What would be the join operations? How does that work? Okay, the next step that might come into the terms is that how do you understand the perfect mixture of a backend language, what your API should be built upon, what should be the backend server, that is, what would be your server. Should you go with Apache server? Shall you have a proxy server like Nginx? What should it be running upon? Should you have Django as your backend? Should you have Node as your backend? So these are a lot of things that might come up. Will Node go better with React or Django go better with React? Shall you select Vue over React, or shall you go with PHP and Vue? Even then there's a layer of abstraction. Let's say you are talking about PHP as a language, so shall I go with code igniter? Shall I go with laravel PHP? Shall I go with cake? So these are the questions, and as a software architect you have to have the answer for each of it. Let's say you have zeroed down upon Node, so you have finalized Node as your backend language. Now as an architect, the next layer of abstraction is what should be the process manager that you are using. Even if you have defined, let's say, in a way, if you have got a programming language finalized, you have got the package module ready. So what should be the package that you would be using for third party signups? Shall you use passport.js in case of Node, or shall you use some other package out there? So these are the questions that for which you should have an answer or you could look up to. Now the biggest problem that you as a software architect would face is that there is no such book that helps you build a product, because your product is one unique product that you would be having. It is having completely different use case than the other products out there. So you do not have any guide, you do not have any book to go by, like okay, acha, node select kara, let's say अब मुझे ये पैकेज यूज करना चाहिए, I should utilize this package. That is not written anywhere in the book, nor you will find any tutorial for it. There might be certain courses. Let's say you get to understand from the project builders, software architects, how Netflix is working, how Hotstar is working, how, let's say, edtech firms like Unacademy are working. You get to know how Zomato's architecture is working, but your use case, though falling in the same domain, could be totally different. How your APIs are handling or exchanging requests, how your server is interacting. Should you have a socket server? Should you have a virtual instance running up there, or should you go serverless? So these are totally dependent upon the use case that you're having, and that totally depends upon the experience that you have got as a developer, I'd say, and how well you have brushed up with the consequences. Because you can't say that okay, I've got everything. Every day there will be certain kind of integration that is coming up. Let's say you are integrating a payment ecosystem. You haven't done that before yet. As an architect, you do not know. You have got a lot of options. Let's say Stripe, you have got Razorpay, you have got cash free. There are n number of services which help you integrate payment portal into your system. But which one should you select? Should you test each of them? The moment you start testing, you lose about around 1 month of timeline, and definitely time is running. You are paying the developers. So which one should you select? There's a question. So you need to zero down. You have to believe in your gut. Okay, the resume, I'm selecting it. Let's go along with it. So these are the challenges that you as a software developer might face.
Yep, exactly. We have a brief plan before we are designing the product. We should have a great blueprint for it. What are the technologies we're using? It is not actually essential that we should know all the technologies we should use. We should have a great plan and the algorithm we should use. And of course, certain discussions are required with our team so to have a better product coming up with us. So yeah, we do have some questions from audience here, and here's second one. So what kind of high level design software architect do? I
So
think you
in when
pretty
you're
well
talking,
explained it
yeah,
as
yeah,
well.
yeah, definitely. So let's say, how do you understand a product? You might get it from a user's perspective. From a user's perspective, a software or a project might look like, okay, sign up kara, profile create kara. If it's, let's say, edtech platform, course download kara, card pe add kara, and then I've downloaded it. I've got it, and I can view it anytime. This is from a user's perspective. But from a developer's perspective or from an admin's perspective, let's say, now this was only the user's perspective. Coming to the admin's perspective, you would get to know, like, acha, how many people have registered today to your platform? That is one question. The other question is, how many people have gone and added a course to their cart? That is insightful. You need to know ki which course, let's say if you're talking about an edtech platform, which course is being looked after the most, why people are getting back after adding it to the cart. You need to know that, because it might be overpriced. It might be that, okay, they have read certain reviews about it, and then that is the reason why they have not bought it. So as an admin, you need to know that. Now there comes the request that, okay, as an admin, you would request to your developer, "Mujhe ye dekhna, I want to see that, okay, how many people have added this book to their cart or this course to their cart." Now, as a developer, if you haven't planned all these, you would be clueless, like, okay, hey, I have built this project, it is pretty fine, but I do not have an API or a parameter which captures like how many users have added it to the cart. I do not have a variable which captures like how many users are actually currently onto the page of the course. So you have to, as a software architect, you have to have the all those answers with you, like, okay, if this might happen, the admin or the client may ask for this at one end. And if this has been asked by the client, the developer should have an answer to this. So this is a three-layer abstraction that is going on. And as a user, you have to also create a reliability for the user that your data is not being misappropriately used. So these are the things that you need to understand. Now, in terms of high level design, when you're designing a software, what all things you have to keep in mind? How do you design it? So first of all, the first and foremost practice that you should maintain is that you should have a parameter for everything. You should have the capability to add in parameters. You should have a capability to add in row columns to your DB. So for that reason, these days developers find a better way, ease part I'd say, by opting for NoSQL. While at later stages they do feel that they customize it again for the SQL part. So that is one thing. The other thing is, as a high level design aspect, you need to understand what all things might come up, what all things you might have to present to the admin side, you might have to present to the user side. So you need to have an API for everything. But again, there's a catch over it. You should not have an excess of API that your web page is loading and there's a line written below that requesting XYZ, requesting for response from this. So obviously there's a very sweet spot that you need to hit in terms of everything, whether you're thinking about the APIs that need to be hit, the number of circumstances that might appear, how you will have the answers to the questions or demands that the user have in terms of the features. So as a high level architect, you have to design everything. You have to have drawing boards prepared. You will have to use certain documentation tools. Some of the documentation tools I've mentioned that developers or architects should use is draw.io. It is free of cost and it helps you create pretty beautiful user flows, admin flows, I'd say concentrating or creating ER diagrams. And there you could use other services like Kitbook, there's Notion, there are n number of things that you could utilize. And obviously there's GitHub in which you could build an entire software habit, project management could be done over there. You could have drawing boards, everything could be there. So this is what as a high level designer software architecture does.
Yeah, I think high level architect has to think of on both the perspectives, or very briefly on the user side, on the on the owner side who is giving you the actually the client one, to think of the manner that how they need the data, how they should get the features out of the product. So definitely it's well lost. Okay, so for the another question, and it's actually one of the questions I like very much, that is algorithm for component is decided by the software architect.
To an extent, I'd say like a software architect decides the algorithm, does not write it at most of the cases. To some extent, it totally depends upon the product and the scale of the team. So if there's a small team, let's say you have got a back-end developer, you have got a front-end developer, that is the team, then definitely the architect would be doing all the job. He would be writing the algorithm, though it might be possible that he's just writing the algorithm on pen and paper, or might be somewhere on his desktop, and then the developer curates it into programming language syntax. That might be cases. At cases, there's a team completely which dedicates their entire research, because algorithms are a thing which plays a pretty crucial role. As I said, right now you might not feel the brunt of having optimized code, but the moment you reach 10,000 users, the moment you reach 1 lakh users, then that one single KB of optimization creates a huge difference. Just take the example, this 1 KB which compiles into 1000 KB comes into 1 MB. So the moment you have got 1000 users, it is resulting into 1 MB of difference. Now add up to it another 1000 users, and then you have got 1 GB of it, because 1000 MB created. So the moment you hit 1 lakh users, you are hitting it to 1 GB of complexity, and there you go. The moment you hit 1 GB of complexity, you will be getting long invoices from your server, like the cloud systems, let's say Amazon or Google or Microsoft. Azure will be sending you bills, and you have to pay for it. So yeah, algorithms have to be pretty minutely looked into over there.
Okay, fine, very brilliant answer. I got another question from me only, that you said that when sometimes software architects do have to design the algorithms when they are pretty much easy, but if there comes that the algorithms are very hard, like they require something. I should say the algorithms which are not very much popular. Maybe it is required. Maybe they are of the C++ competitive programming algorithms, which are being very rarely used. So there is any person or any hired person for making such algorithms, or software engineers has to do that.
So actually, it totally depends upon cases. So let's say designing algorithm is not everywhere required in a way, because some things are pretty well known to developer. As a backend developer, a person should know what kind of statements to use, what kind of optimization practices to use. So most of the times the single if else or simple loop does the job for you. But at times when you're running complex algorithms, you need to have some person who is like having an expertise. So by expertise, what you do mean is that he writes the algorithm for you, he tests it, he checks the complexity at different stages, like what is the complexity of this algorithm, and he gives you results like, okay, this is the complexity right now when one single hit is being made. This would be the complexity, and it would amount to this much of, let's say, space complexity or time complexity. This would be the time complexity. Now there are certain restraints that you need to consider. So you need the help of an expert. If you're Mostly it's in the admin side at the product end, because users only get to know the 10% of the product, but at the admin ends there are a lot of analytics that you're going through. And for easing those algorithms, there are certain tools, like you might have heard of Microsoft Power BI tool, that is just for analytics. So these are the tools that help reduce the load from the algorithm developer, and just simply have those third party integrations being built. So again, there's a sweet spot that whether you want to pay certain third party analytical tools for it, or you want to have your own algorithm designer and you want to pay him. So that's a question that comes up next. And if you're, let's say, building a software, I'd say, in terms of analytics or algorithms, you have to understand, like, okay, right now, so say for example, there's a pretty good video out there, about Hotstar. So Hotstar, during its like time, during a match, let's say India Pakistan, it hits around 25 crore viewers. So what does that mean? 25 crore systems are running that video right now, live stream. So you are having a live stream channel. Now the moment the ad runs in, people quickly switch off their apps, get to Instagram to tweet like, hey, just to feed that, hey, I'm watching this match, or just to go and tweet. So there's from 25 crore viewers, the moment the video plays in, ad plays in, or there's a break, let's say the drinks break for 15 minutes or 10 minutes, there's a steep decline. So that decline, those 25 cr, even if you count like for those 25 cr you are using the hepta VMs of AWS, I'd say. So they are costing you like thousands of dollars every minute that they are running. So as a software architect, how do you reduce that cost? How perfectly are those load balancers? Because load balancers which are driven by AI need at least 5 minutes to respond to. Now just account for this. There are 25 CR viewers onto your platform, and there's a break. So that 25 CR people have fallen down to just 1 lakh viewers for the next 15 minutes while the drinks break is running. So till that time, the load balancer understands that there's a steep decline and shuts down the VM. Shutting down a VM takes another 5 minutes. So there's 10 minutes that are lost. So, as an AI based load balancer, there would be 10 minutes of billing that you would be cost already for those 25 CR people, though they are not there. And when the people start getting back after the drinks break, your load balancer will understand that same case after 5 minutes that okay, people are increasing, I need to start the VM again. Now, till the time the VM starts running, you have already lost another 10 minutes. Now, contrary to the previous time when users were falling, there was no such issue. But when your users are gaining, your servers will time out. People who were watching even during the drinks break, their systems would also crash. The app would crash throughout because there were only two VMs that were running during the drinks break, and the AI was not able to get it that they need to start another 10 VMs after the drinks break. So, how do you schedule it? You need to have a perfect spot over there as well. Otherwise, you have lost billions of dollars, and definitely there's a bad marketing. The moment a match like India Pakistan stops streaming, what do you do then? People
Yeah,
will
exactly.
blame you, they will call shout outs to Hosta. So these are the problems that a software architect faces. Though definitely I'm pretty, like I'd say, we at our own level in startups, we are 100x smaller to those big giants out there. But yeah, we too do face this kind of issue. Let's say, for instance, as a hackathon, let's say, because the audience would pretty much relate to a hackathon, there's a closure of idea submission. Now, what does happen? Teams usually keep that submission of the idea till the last moment. They think, okay, abhi time hai to submit the idea. I'll submit it the last moment. So let's say you are having 1,000 teams participating in a hackathon, and all of those out of that, let's say 60% of the teams, 600 teams submit the idea at the dead end. Now, even if 600 teams upload 10 MB of file, just account to the load that the server would be facing. And there goes your server crashing. You get to having 500 bad requests, and the very next month you start getting tweets which say that this hackathon platform is not good at all. You should not organize your hackathon because it is not able to face the load. So these are the challenges that you as a software developer would face or an architect would face out there.
Yep, pretty much cool with an example of India versus Pakistan match. So yeah, we move on to the yeah. Thank you very much, Kaushik, and we do have a last question from the pile. This is one. Can you recommend any software for designing UML diagram?
Yeah, for that, in college, I do remember faculties who to post Star UML that used to be there. People do follow Star UML, that's such software. But as like a professional, I'd say the best tool out there is draw.io, which you could hook up to. It's completely free of cost to be used. It's an open source as well, and you could integrate it directly with your Google Drive. So you could have the UML diagrams directly backed up onto your Google Drive. So that secures it as well. So I'd suggest using draw.io to anyone who is looking forward to having, like, let's say, UML diagrams for their project.
Yeah, thank you very much. Hope it answers the question to you, Payal. So yeah, we meanwhile Varsha is back and we can get a call. Get a
Hey there, Kaushik. It was
Yeah.
really amazing listening to you from the backstage. So I have a final question for you. So, knowing what you know already, now, is there any
I think I lost you, Harsha, in between.
Yeah, looks like there is another lag from the Varsha side. Meanwhile, we have to drop him to the back side, I think. So yeah, that's pretty much from the questions from my side. Meanwhile, if Aisha gets down, I don't think she will be able to get to the stream. But yeah, it's a very much good session, a pretty much good session from you. Having getting knowledge of the product designing and the entrepreneurship is very much awesome from you. I really got a very brilliant information and knowledge about it. And Payal also from the audience has given the very good questions to ask them. So, just summing up the session right now, we also want to announce to the audience that we are coming up. We are just with the last session of the BUGTRONS series right now, and we are just summing up. So, thanks to the Kaushik for joining us and providing a great information to our audience and our organizers as well. So yeah, pretty much to this. Thanks to you, Kaushik. Thank you for the great insights. Uh, Thank you very much. And also want to announce to the audience that yeah, do register for the BUGTRONS if you are not aware of it. So BUGTRONS is a DSA-based contest which are solely concerned about the data structures and the algorithms. And the links of the website is just put it in the comments by the DEVSTRONS. I think we should pin it. Yep, it's pinned here, and do check it out. Do register for the BUGTRONS channel, and yep, it is actually designed on the basis of algorithms. So you will get a good analysis on how to brief to them algorithms, and it will surely help you in your futures for for the careers, for the placements, and also for the software designing perspective. Yeah, thank you, Kaushik. Thanks for, thanks for joining us. So,
Yeah.
are you audible?
Thank you. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Bye bye.
Bye bye.